You'll start with saying Wajdi,
Okay,
So
sure.
Wajdi, thank you so much for being here to share with us some of the knowledge that helps us as a foundation, as a nonprofit organization, but also helps anybody interested in improving education.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give a little bit of a background about you, and then please correct me or please add to that if you want to add anything to that. But Wajdi Manai is a senior associate and managing director of collaborative technology at the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. In this role, you're basically working on a variety of technologies, including for the development and administration, as well as the information infrastructure for the foundation. And before coming to the Carnegie Foundation, you have had experience with Yahoo, the big technology company, working as both a technical lead and a project manager, as well as other roles as well prior to that, from your education in Tunisia. Yeah. Wajdi, has a degree in computer science from Faculté des Sciences Économiques et de Gestion, ASFAQS. So Tunisian, not just native Tunisian, but also educated in Tunisia. And then you completed your studies at UC Davis afterwards, and the university and got in 2005 the UC Davis Citation for Excellence and Achievement Award. And that was an acknowledgement of your achievements and quality of work at the university. Was I fair in my bio, in my description? Or do I need to add anything else?
Yeah, I think few things have changed ever since. So now my focus is on improvement science and networked improvement communities, and really working on changing minds and hearts of people working in the educational field to really take care of issues of equity and diversity in educational systems. Because at its heart, the biggest problem that they're challenging us today is this problem of inequity. So,
so in your role, you stepped away a little bit from technology, and you're more into program development and design, right?
That's right. I didn't step away completely, but it's basically creating the technology that supports that, and it's extremely hard and extremely challenging when you're creating technology that changes the minds and hearts of people. So can they implement this work versus technology to do accounting or technology to do machine learning? That's very, very simple, much easier.
No, I get that. I appreciate that so much. In fact, education is, the essence of education is changing people's perspective to the world. And maybe that's one of the things actually that's common to us, coming from Tunisia, is it's only through education that we have been to see a different world and live in a different world. So how do you make that happen?
So I believe that education is the an equalizer. If people don't get to choose the environment that they're born in, the environment that they evolve in, but actually through education they can equalize that environment. Yes. It's a upward mobility process in a way. Yes. So for the unfortunate and the misfits and the people that encountered disadvantages, I think education is the great tool to equalize the playing field for everyone. Yes. That's why it's something that I'm passionate about.
It's I like the word equalizer. It's at the essence of the whole concept around dignity, right? And around freedom. In Tunisia, when we had the revolution, it was about literally freedom and dignity. And we always ask the question, okay, how can we achieve that? Is it about paying people the same thing or giving them equal access to the job market or whatever? But one way of doing it is giving everybody the same access to education, the same quality education. And that gives them, I think I like the word you said, opportunity.
Yeah, so, no, totally. Yeah,
really and opportunity.
And a lack of not doing that creates a lot of problems. And we can go into what kind of problems these are, but there's a lot that could be lost not providing equal opportunities for folks.
Yeah, and so maybe there is that connection between education and later on social classes, I guess, or economic potential.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, totally, right? Okay. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit more about the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Education.
Yeah, so the Carnegie Foundation is a non-for-profit foundation. It's an operational foundation. We do not give grants, but we work on hairy problems of practice in education. Under each presidency, the Carnegie Foundation kind of changes kind of the problem that the foundation chooses to work on. And in this presidency of Tony Bright, since 2008, the focus has been of implementing improvement science and creating the field of improvement science to improve hairy problem of practice in education.
Okay.
So what the Carnegie does are mini reforms at the state level, at the organizational level of some entities, educational entities, by employing a method. It's the improvement science method, largely borrowed and analogically scavenged from other disciplines, engineering, service design, healthcare, networks, and we'll talk about networks in a little bit. And we created what we call, I mean, we give it a name, what we've been referring to as networked improvement communities.
Yes.
As a possible organizational method or organizational process by which we can address problems that other methodology were not able to address in the educational field because of the specificities and the constraints of the educational field. We've been very successful in changing and moving the needle on many, many issues, whether it's student retention of teachers, math literacy, reading and writing, coaching.
So you have correlated the use of the methodology and the process with the results in the education field in the US.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's brilliant.
You know, for instance, I'll take the remedial math. The success rate of people going to community college in order for them to transfer to a 4 years degree college has been extremely low, like 6% of anybody who is attaining math credit in community college. There's only 6% who are attaining math credit to be able to make them transfer to a 4-year college.
Yes.
By implementing the methodology that we've used, it's called the Carnegie Math Pathways, creating pathways using improvement science, we're able to get to a 70% success rate. So we're blowing it out of the ballpark with respect to the success rate and with respect to the time. It takes much less time to get people through. That's one example. Many others we worked on, many other problems, but this is to tell you the huge magnitude of the impact the Carnegie is making, the Carnegie Foundation is making with respect to one specific problem right now, but also literacy, as I mentioned, and retention, moving the needle on many of these issues that we're encountering.
Well, you know, that's definitely, you know, remarkable, and that is needed, I guess, in the US, but also in Tunisia. In fact, you know, the reason how we got to connect with each other is related to this work that we want to do, and we're working on for solving the dropout rate, which is alarmingly increasing in Tunisia. And the other side of that is increasing the retention rate, I guess.
Sure.
And what I remember from our conversation is, you know, we were looking at this from multiple aspects. We're thinking in terms of solutions, actually. And the one thing that you advised us to do, and this in a way, bringing the whole Carnegie philosophy into this, is to say, hold on the solution, okay? Let's look at the root cause, but in a more foundational way. And here's the path, and here's how to build the networked community to do so. So can you tell us more about that root cause view, or that search for the root cause, and how it can help change the reality in the education sector based on your experience?
Yes. So a couple of things. Let me back up a little bit and mention that why is it important, the work that Care for 24 is doing. Okay. From a governmental egotistical or selfish perspective, this is a very important problem to work on, because if you don't, here's what's going to happen. For instance, if there are no equity in outcome for respect to the education in Tunisia, you're lowering, as a government, you're lowering the tax bracket that you can tax against, because dropout and people not graduating, that will make less money, right? Let's face it. And therefore, the government gets less taxes. So that's one thing. The second thing is...
I like that return on investment.
There you go. That's an ROI, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if we allow for this dropout rate to continue, we're less competitive as a country. We're less competitive about people where some of these people that are falling through the cracks, the people that the system let them down, could be the greatest innovators, but we never saw it because they never made it through the system. So that's
it didn't have the opportunity. Exactly.
Didn't have the opportunity.
Yeah.
Third, which is in a post-revolutionary Tunisia, it weakens the democracy. Yes. And it weakens it because you get uneducated or people who do not know much about how to function as a citizen in a democracy, knowing that we get most of our education with respect to the civic duties through our education. And having that dropout rate being high, it creates an unformed society. Yes. I'm not sure if you saw the movie Idiocracy. It's an interesting parallel of what could happen, a little bit exaggerated there.
Yeah. And in fact, Tunisia, I like what you mentioned on the democracy side, because Tunisia is let's put it this way, it's like the baby of the free world, you know? It's like one of those countries in that part, the only country, as a matter of fact, from the entire region that made it. But it's all contingent on the fact that there is an educated population.
Sure.
So now with the dropout, what is the state of this democracy in 5 years, 10 years?
Exactly, it's eroding over time, right? So if we don't attend to it.
Yeah.
So definitely there's a problem, and definitely we need to address it. Now, we all suffer from this. It's called the solutionitis problem. I suffer from it, you suffer from it, everybody suffers from it. It just preventing ourselves from getting into the problem when we know about it, when we actually become a solutionitis. And this is very simple. It could be like, oh, I'd like to lose weight. This is my problem, my personal problem. I'd like to lose weight, or I'd like to save more money. This is another something I'm trying to, what can I do? And we find ourselves, rather than thinking about why am I gaining weight or why am I spending more money, finding myself throwing ideas. Oh, I should not go out more, as often as I do. I should eat less. Okay, those are good ideas, right? But really, what is the root cause of this? In education, you get this translated a little bit differently. For instance, you're having a problem of literacy, early literacy. Too many children reach the grade of 3 without being able to read properly. And you find a lot of people coming up with ideas. We need new books. We need to train teachers. We need an online program that helps these kids read better. We need to create tutoring centers, et cetera, et cetera. We do not suffer from a lack of ideas. Matter of fact, we suffer from an abundance of ideas. And when we don't address this systematically through studying what is causing the problem, we may end up with 3 things. Either we're just attacking the symptoms of the problems, and we end up putting band-aids after band-aids after another band-aids. A lot of the ideas may not work really well together, right? Because one, it's counterproductive. Something may cancel something else, right?
Yes.
And third, I've never been in an organization or worked in an organization or lived in a society where there's an abundance of resources. So being extra careful about leveraging the resources by picking which idea we want to work on is, there's a cost benefit to that. There is this guy by the name of Atul Gawande. He wrote a book called Better, and how to get better at getting better. So he equates this problem of, he's a doctor, and he equates this, in America, people want the best facilities, the best doctors, the best medication, and the best care. And no one thinks about integrating those together. So you get all these best things, but they don't work very nice together. He equates this to the idea, what happens if we take, to build the best car, we take the brakes from Porsche because they make the best brake, the engine of a Ferrari because it's a best engine. and the computer system of a Tesla and put it all together. And he argues that if you put all that together, you end up with a very expensive pile of junk. And that's exactly what happens, because we're not spending the time to think about what is really causing this.
Yes.
And going through a root cause analysis of figuring out what's causing the problem. And we know we're not going to be able to work on all of the causes, but we also know that 80% of the results are caused by 20% of the causes. So we can be, this is the Pareto principle, we could be extra careful with the resources to only address the 20% problems to address 80% of the bigger problem. And that is why it's important. It saves money, it allows us to be efficient, and at the same time, it allows us to really get something that lasts versus a Band-Aid that can fix it for a year or two.
In fact, I mean, I agree with you 100% actually. And I like the comparison with the car, putting it all together. It applies, for example, for a soccer team. You bring all the superstars, you put them all together, you might not get the best team actually.
Absolutely.
With that gets the results. And actually for Care for 24 and as an organization, we kind of like try to do a number of surveys. Hold on, let me change the angle here with the sun coming from there.
At least it's sunny in DC.
Yeah, it's sunny in DC. How about that? But, we looked at, for example, when we think of the dropout rate and we looked at the literature review and the whole concept, which is a major issue right now, it's alarming. Over 100,000 kids leave schools by most of the statistics from UNICEF, from, the National Institute of Statistics. So in a country with 3 million kids, that's a high rate.
Yeah.
And when we look at it by region, we try to run just as an understanding, a number of qualitative surveys per region. We actually realized there are issues, for example, that we saw in GAFSA, culturally speaking, connecting at least, one of the root causes on dropout that are different from Kirwan. Which, by the way, for example, I was talking to a professor actually in Tunisia who has experience working with in Kirwan, and he was telling me, well, it's that particular region in Tunisia leads the country in terms of dropout rate, but also in terms of violence against kids, and in terms of suicides, actually. So mental health issues. And for example, when he brought up the issue of mental health issues and the whole violence in schools, I'll tell you, when we were doing our root cause analysis in other regions, it didn't come up. It did not even come up, right? But then when we were talking to somebody else from another region, that came up. And now we're looking into it. And so that just, when you're doing these data collection, things come up and you realize that you do a lot of assumptions when you're approaching actually even a root cause, even when you're collecting the data. So you need to keep yourself in check. By diversifying the data sources, for example. So one of the things actually we're looking for, and I want to see if there is a parallel to the US here based on what you have done. So have you find any correlation between, these, looking at the root cause at least per geographical areas or per, statewide, maybe district-wide? I mean, the geographical aspect, is it important? And the root cause analysis? Yeah.
Well, I would say not with respect to the root cause analysis, but the implementation of an innovation has to be implemented in a way that A, honors the diverse context, and B, takes in consideration that context in order for the idea to be widely adopted.
Okay.
I'll give you an example, for instance. A couple of years ago, my wife and I went to Japan in Tokyo, and we went to a Starbucks. Now, mind you, my experience of Starbucks has been in the US and probably in Europe, in Western country. It is exactly the same Starbucks that whether you go in Texas or you go in France or you go in Barcelona, it looks pretty much the same. We walked in the the one in Tokyo, and we saw tatamis on the floor. Different way of serving the coffee. There is still a Starbucks. You can still go in and recognize it's a Starbucks.
Okay.
So there is an aspect of the adaptation, which I call which we call, I should say, adaptive integration.
Okay.
When you're finding an innovation that works in a specific context, you have to think about how you make that innovation work in a different context by staying at the same time faithful to the context and faithful to the innovation at the same time. So these are the tweaks that are needed to be done to make it work. For instance, I'll take the example you gave me about GAFSA in Kirwan. The essence of improvement science, as it's preached by Carnegie and Edward Deming before Carnegie and many others in various industries, fields of industries, is to find out what works for whom under what circumstances. There will be always positive deviance and there will be always negative deviance. It's a matter of figuring out why what's causing the negative deviance and what is working for others, and how can I take what works in GAFSA, for instance, and figure out an adaptive integration of that in Kirwan, whether to curb some of the problems or whether to improve. So that's kind of the important way to have, and that's what you get with the networked improvement community, is you trying the same change idea in different contexts, and you collecting data to figure out what works and what constitutes a change that is positive, and figuring why it doesn't work in other sections. And you're actually iterating constantly until you equalize the intervention so it works as an adaptive integrated intervention there.
I like when you mentioned those examples to make the concept actually clearer. So the Starbucks configuration to the environment, I guess. And indeed, I mean, schools in Tunisia, I mean, one of the great things about the educational system in Tunisia is the fact that to a certain extent, it has been built to be standard and the same across the entire country. We sit for the same national exam. We do it in an anonymous way. We go through the same curriculum. Somehow there has been that kind of standardization spirit. But that by itself is a good thing, but we need actually, whether for retention, for innovative solution to solve the problem, but also, for corrective action, we need to be able to take into account the local somehow specificity. If, GAFSA is an industrial mining region, why can't that be of extra, importance in the education? Beja is a completely great agricultural area. Why can't that be, for example, of importance? And I'm just citing an example here, but just the logic or the philosophy of being faithful to the principles, yet integrated into adapting the integration, I guess.
There is a simple equation, and the government doesn't set that equation. It's the local context that sets that equation. And the equation is between three stakeholders: the industry in the region, the desire of the student, and what educational institution can offer. It has to be aligned.
Yes.
You cannot have an educational institution that offer knowledge, diplomas, what have you, that is not the desire of the student, that doesn't align with the desire of the student, just to start, and then doesn't align with the necessity or the requirement of that environment that institution is in. Take the case of for GAFSA, for instance. If it's an mining industrial environment, well, we need universities, we need schools, we need people that teach know-how that actually serve that industry, and we need to create an awareness or raise the awareness of students and children and young adults to value the industry that exists in their region, and find the know-how to be able to integrate that and evolve as a career, leadership position, to flourish. And, if that equation is not balanced, and I think, unfortunately, it's not balanced in many of the regions we have because of this one way of seeing things and one way to educate at the middle, right? At the average, it creates that discrepancy. So we don't need to overhaul the entire system. You need to do these, what I call adaptive integrations.
Yes. So this takes me to, when you talked about this equation, the key thing in there is really the stakeholders that could work on that equation, define the equation, implement that equation in a way. And this takes me to the concept of this community that is networked toward that improvement goal. Can you give us more of a definition and example what a NIC, a networked improvement community, is, and explain to us the importance of that and making change happen?
Okay. Wow. How much time we have?
You didn't see that coming, huh?
So networked improvement communities. Why network improvement communities work, at least the way I've been involved in them. Let's rewind back a little bit of the history. Before thinking about networked improvement community, and before we think about how we go about implementing a process or a program, we live, and I think to some degree in Tunisia, we continue living in this accountability system. The ministry sets up targets and accountability for these targets, and they get disseminated to different regions, different entities, and you have to meet your numbers, right? We don't care how, but you have to meet these numbers. We know that accountability doesn't work. We know that that type of thing, when you don't have buy-in of the communities about how we can bring about change that is positive, accountability doesn't work. And accountability doesn't work because basically there is an innuendo in that failure is not okay and failure is not an option. And the only way to improve is to embrace failure as an option. As we say always, fail often and fail fast. If you were going to fail often, fail fast, learn from it, and move on, right? So that's kind of was the first impetus to start thinking about how we implement innovation or programs differently than this accountability type of culture.
Yes.
We know that accountability also is a predictive failure. We know that people will fail because if you're thinking about the US, you think about all the initiatives like No Child Left Behind Act and a few other initiatives, the Common Core. They're not the most successful one because it's a top-down, right? It is not initiated by people who live it day and night, the part of the community. It is someone up there decided this is how things should be, and I'm going to hold you accountable to get the results. Never worked. It's not going to work. Now, a more comprehensive approach requires more stakeholders to be involved.
Okay.
And the central stakeholder to be involved is the student. Why is it the student? Because that's the student who's been failed by the systems, whether it is the teacher, the curriculum, the coaching, the infrastructure, the schools, the environment. That is the one central element that has been failed by all of them.
Yes.
So if you're asking a teacher what's the problem, he's going to see that he or she's going to see that from a teacher's perspective, right?
Great. Yeah.
But whereas the student's going to see it from the administration, from the infrastructure, from the way he's been taught or she's been taught, from all of these different aspects. So students and other stakeholders need to be part of this networked improved community. And then there is a reason why it's called networked improvement community. The reason why this is the responsibility of the community itself, for this NIC, Networked Improvement Community, for the responsibility of the NIC to really think hard about the problem and really think hard about the proposed solution and hold each other accountable for not succeeding as a one entity rather than turning around and blaming someone else. Yes. It is a system problem. It is the issues that we're experiencing in Tunisia are a system issues. They're not the teachers' issues, not the school, it's not the curriculum, it is a system. It is the conditions that led us to get to a point where it became a big problem. And the first rule about addressing that problem, as I mentioned, is to study it, to implement possible solution, innovation, we call them change ideas, how we're going to change the system, and to measure the impact of these changes. Because if it wasn't two measures, we would never know whether a change is impacting the system positively or negatively, right? So we have to also come up with this system of measures that tell us whether we're on the right track or not. So a networked improvement community is a combination, is a way to organize an intervention and using improvement science and A3 thinking to really track us, to let us know whether we're on the right track or not as we implementing these innovation. Within it, it has an intrinsic process, which is an iterative process. I'm going to try something, I might fail, I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to try it again after I bring about some tweaks or some adaptation, and then try again. And as I'm trying again, I'm going through these cycles of trials, I'm expanding my scope. Maybe you try something in one student, with one student in one classroom. Maybe it's 5 students in 2 classrooms. Maybe it's an entire school or 2 schools. You're increasing the scope of the intervention as you gain in confidence and warrant on how it works. And these are kind of the building blocks of a networked improvement community. There are many other things that are involved that we may not have the time to dive deep into with respect of how you're creating knowledge and who educating the knowledge and how knowledge has been disseminated within a networked improvement community. There are principles that guide that as well.
Well, thank you for explaining that. I mean, my view when I first heard about it, and as I hear you explain it right now, the most attractive element to that is the fact that it's enabling, it's empowering. It's empowering those who are actually living the issue to make something about it. And it's kind of like, it's not top down, but at the same time, it's bottom up, but at the same time, it feels horizontal, where everybody's important, multiple stakeholders, maybe not of the same nature, like let's think of trying to solve this in a particular region. You can have a NIC formed with the students, with the teachers, with the civil society, companies involved interacting with that, somebody representing the Ministry of Education or whatever the administrative body. It could be even a civil society leader. I mean, a parent, anybody. And then the idea is that if you can get them to collaborate toward that specific goal, and succeed, you already created a successful functioning entity. And so my question to you is, okay, what is a successful NIC?
Oh, what is a successful NIC? A successful, well, that's an interesting question, because when a NIC is successful, does that mean that they're done with their work, with their improvement work? The answer to that, I can tell you, it's no. Improvement never ends. So basically, in a way, a successful NIC is a NIC that keeps going, right? And maybe you're increasing the challenge and your aim, and you're expanding your aim to even more challenging situations. But I would say, if you were to think about this in terms of improvement, a successful NIC is a NIC that is able to address its community, the problem of its community, and progressively solve them and improving over time. A NIC is successful is a NIC that is getting better at becoming better, right? That is another definition is a successful NIC is a NIC where its members now identify with the identity of an improver. I'm no longer a member of a NIC, I'm an improver. That's my identity as a person, because I have the tools, and this is a passion, and I see the world through this lens of improvement, right? I think
and
that would be...
I'll tell you, that's a big shift. And culture. We tend to I mean, and if you look at the public debate around education in Tunisia, it's really always problem-centered. It's never solution-centered. And you've mentioned earlier a point where it says, we have limited resources. You know, Tunisia is one of very few countries in the region that spends a lot of money on education compared to other sectors. So we're a society that invests in education, and yet the education system is failing. And everybody says, well, because all the money is going to teacher salaries, and we know we don't have the money to buy technology. We don't have the money to do this. We don't have the money to do that. But yet it's you know, these are all these like received ideas somehow about what is a modern school or a modern education system, and we need a lot of money for it, and we need all of these things, and yet maybe that's not the you know, that maybe that's not actually a root cause.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. And that's why it's so important to figure out why we're getting the results that we're getting right now. And then it's really,
yeah, you know, it's, you know, the whole concept is really key for you know, a developing nation like Tunisia.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you, with your experience, having studied in Tunisia, and you're working on an improvement agenda here, leading, you know, this effort around with a leading organization like this in the US, do you see any, would you say that we have way more in common when it comes to how we want to improve education than what we might think we have?
Oh,
between both countries?
You mean in Tunisia? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's maddening sometimes to see the rhetoric that is going on the media about what constitutes a reform. I think the idea of networked improvement community has never been more salient for me than the Tunisian context. Yeah. Because we have limited resources. Yes. Because we want everybody to matter, right? Yes. And this is where everyone matters. This is where the union matter, the teacher matter, the student matter, and it's a win-win-win situation for everyone. What is more important about this? You can argue all day long if someone tells you to, through a top-down approach, to tell you this is what you need to do. You can argue back and refuse and rebel, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really hard to refuse and rebel when the ideas themselves are coming from you and your community together. That's why it's so important to level the field, where in a networked improvement community, everyone is a teacher and everyone is a learner. Yes. I'm going to learn as much from you working in the union than from a student, than you from me as a researcher, and we all have equal input so we can decide what's best for our community and how we solve that problem. You see how it equalizes the playing field?
You know what, actually you made me think of something. So basically Tunisia is a democracy, right? So we no longer have the top down, the big guy deciding and everybody applies. So we got that, okay. When that happens, then the education system, basically, it's really whoever gets his voice through gets things done. And so the union have been able to get their agenda through because they're organized. Mm-hmm. And then the management and political have been able to get their interests through in the education sector because obviously they have political power. But no, the students and parents, their voice is not heard.
Yeah.
And so everybody keeps asking the question, well, you know, it's failing, and we need to go back to some sort of system before or authority. But if we can find a way, and next sound like a great venue for that, where we give equal voice to the student, the parent, the union, because they're a big part of it, the you know, the management and the political power, and then also the other, you know, for example, the local companies that are affected by the quality of education. Because at the end of the day, they're the one hiring people from the job market. If they're not well educated, if they don't have the right competencies, I'm a private person. I'm paying for that somehow.
That's absolutely right.
So it's one way. I like the equalizer.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's this issue of integrating all of this. I mean, it doesn't, if we're all loud, well, I mean, how are we going to integrate all the voices? In a way, we lack this idea of sitting together and thinking about the problem in togetherness. Being problem-focused and user-centered is the first principle of network improvement community. So what are we trying to solve this problem for, and how can we go about it? I think,
well,
one thing to
you know,
think.
thank you so much for sharing these great insights with us. I know I would like to, on behalf of Care for 24, every volunteer, but also anybody, by the way, we're proud of you for being a Tunisian, working on such a great concept and a great methodology that is being actually in use right now in the US in the education sector. We're hoping we could learn from it and do our little contribution to the education sector in Tunisia. And in a way, I mean, I'll put this into the larger context of, I mean, we Tunisians that immigrated to the US, right? And we made our lives here. And, you know, we learned a lot from this, the practicality of the way this country functions.
Yeah.
I think that's, you know, I think we have a lot in common between both countries and both people. And I think possibly the education sector could be, you know, one of those most, you know, the most obvious bridges
Yeah.
between countries.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you and myself are the result of a public Tunisian educational system. We're lucky to be here and learn more. I think about all of the students, all of the ambitious folks in Tunisia that today the system is failing them. It's not a reflection of who they are. It's a reflection on the system that is failing them. I think with enough will and tweaks and changes and reform, call it, there's no reason why our youth would be squandered. There's no reason why our youth would be immigrating to other countries illegally. That's the problem we see happening. And it's a matter of sitting together and figuring out what's the best way we can approach this using the best resources we have. I make myself available, and you're available too, and hopefully something will pan out.
Well, you said it in the most eloquent way. Care for 24's mission is to enable every single Tunisian child to overcome their circumstances.
Yeah.
And it's about the opportunity. So that's what got us together. And I hope I hope you continue supporting this, and also you continue doing this great work and informing the world about it. Well, Wajdi, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And as we progress in doing, you know, our work, we will keep everybody who follows Care for 24 up to date. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.